Have you ever wondered why some parts of our Arab world seem stuck in time? We see incredible progress in technology, science, and human rights elsewhere, and we ask ourselves, why not here? This question is at the heart of a group of thinkers known as Arab liberals. They are not a political party with a single leader, but a diverse stream of intellectuals, writers, activists, and everyday citizens. They share a common dream: to bring the best ideas of modern progress, like individual freedom, human rights, and democracy, into our societies. They believe that our cultures can embrace these values without losing their identity. They look at the West, not to copy it blindly, but to learn from its long journey with these ideas. These thinkers are often called West-leaning or Karbsadigan, sometimes as a criticism. However, their goal isn't to erase our heritage. Instead, they want to build a bridge between our rich traditions and the universal principles of modernity. They argue that concepts like liberty and justice are not exclusively Western, but belong to all of humanity. Their aim is to reform, not replace. They want to see governments that are accountable to the people, laws that protect every individual's rights, regardless of their background, and a society where open discussion is not a crime, but a virtue. They are the dreamers who imagine a different future for the Arab world, one that is both modern and authentic. Many people misunderstand what it means to be an Arab liberal. They imagine someone who has abandoned their culture, language, and faith. This is far from the truth. Most Arab liberals are deeply connected to their roots. They simply believe that our societies need to evolve. They see that many of the problems we face, from economic stagnation to political oppression, are linked to outdated structures and ways of thinking. They advocate for a critical look at our own traditions, keeping what is valuable and timeless, while courageously changing what holds us back. They believe that progress is not a betrayal of our past, but a necessary step towards a brighter future for our children. So, who are these Arab liberals? They are the university professor who encourages critical thinking in her students. They are the journalist who risks his freedom to report the truth. They are the young activist who uses social media to call for change. They are the lawyer who defends human rights in court. They are not a foreign import. They are a voice from within our own societies, a voice that has been calling for reform for over 200 years. They are dreamers, yes, but their dream is a practical one: to see an Arab world that is prosperous, just, and free, taking its rightful place as a contributor to human civilization. The story of Arab liberalism did not begin yesterday. Its roots go back more than 2 centuries, to a single transformative event: Napoleon Bonaparte's invasion of Egypt in 1798. This was not just a military clash, it was a profound cultural shock. The French brought with them not only cannons and soldiers, but also printing presses, scientists, and new ideas about governance and law. For the first time, the Arab world was confronted directly with the power and organization of modern Europe. This encounter sparked a deep and unsettling question among Arab thinkers. Why had they fallen so far behind? This moment of crisis was also a moment of awakening, planting the first seeds of modern reformist thought. In the wake of the French departure, a powerful new leader emerged in Egypt: Mohammed Ali Pasha. While he was an authoritarian ruler, he was also a modernizer. He understood that to build a strong state, he needed to adopt European technology and methods. He sent educational missions to Europe, especially to Paris, to learn about science, military strategy, engineering, and administration. One of the most famous students sent on these missions was Rifa'a al-Tahtawi. When Tahtawi returned to Egypt, he was a changed man. He wrote books describing Parisian life, its political systems, and its social freedoms, introducing concepts like homeland or watan and citizen or muwatin to the Arabic-speaking world. He was a pioneer in trying to reconcile Islamic principles with modern European ideas. Tahtawi was not alone. The 19th century saw the rise of other key intellectual figures who continued this project of reform. Thinkers like Khair al-Din al-Tunisi in Tunisia advocated for a constitutional government that would limit the power of the ruler and protect the rights of the people. Later, in Egypt, figures like Qasim Amin took on the controversial but crucial issue of women's rights. In his book, The Liberation of Women, Amin argued that the advancement of the entire nation was impossible without the education and empowerment of its women. These early liberals were not trying to import the West wholesale. They were selectively borrowing and adapting ideas they believed were universal and beneficial. The impact of these early reformers was immense. They established new schools, started newspapers, and translated key European works into Arabic, opening up a new world of knowledge. They initiated a debate that continues to this day. How can we modernize our societies while staying true to our cultural and religious identity? They faced resistance from conservative religious scholars and autocratic rulers, but they successfully planted the idea that change was not only possible, but necessary. Their courage to question the status quo and to dream of a different kind of society laid the essential groundwork for all the liberal movements that would follow in the 20th and 21st centuries. The first half of the 20th century was a golden age for Arab liberalism. As the Ottoman Empire crumbled and European colonial powers carved up the region, liberal ideas of independence, constitutionalism, and parliamentary democracy became the language of the anti-colonial struggle. Parties like the Waft in Egypt were built on liberal nationalist principles, demanding not just an end to British rule, but also a modern state governed by a constitution and an elected parliament. During this period, known as the liberal experiment, cities like Cairo, Beirut, and Damascus flourished as centers of vibrant political debate, intellectual creativity, and a relatively free press. It was a time of great hope and possibility. This era saw the establishment of constitutions and parliaments in several Arab countries. Political life was dynamic, with different parties competing for power and a relatively high degree of freedom of expression. Intellectuals and artists pushed boundaries, and society seemed to be on a clear path toward modernity. However, this liberal experiment was fragile. It was often dominated by wealthy elites and landowners, and it failed to address the deep economic inequalities faced by the majority of the population. Furthermore, the continued interference of colonial powers and the profound shock of the establishment of Israel in 1948 created a sense of frustration and weakness, leading many to question the effectiveness of the liberal model. The dream began to crumble in the 1950s and 1960s with the rise of a powerful new ideology, Pan-Arab nationalism. Led by charismatic military figures like Gamal Abdel Nasser in Egypt, this movement promised strength, unity, and social justice. It argued that the slow, messy process of parliamentary democracy had failed. The priority, they claimed, was to defeat colonialism and Zionism, and to build a strong, centralized state. in the name of national unity and the struggle against external enemies. These new regimes dismantled the liberal institutions. They banned political parties, shut down independent newspapers, and crushed all forms of dissent. The individual freedoms that liberals had championed were sacrificed for the collective cause. The age of the military officer replaced the age of the intellectual and the politician. The focus shifted from individual liberty to state power. While these nationalist regimes did achieve some successes, such as expanding education and nationalizing key industries, they did so at a terrible cost. They created powerful security states and a culture of fear that stifled creativity and critical thought. Liberalism was pushed to the margins, branded as a weak bourgeois ideology that was out of touch with the needs of the masses. For several decades, the liberal voice was almost completely silenced, forced into exile or into quiet retreat, waiting for the political winds to change once again. After decades of suppression under authoritarian nationalist regimes, Arab liberal thought began to experience a quiet revival in the 1990s. This resurgence was fueled by several powerful global forces. The collapse of the Soviet Union discredited the model of the single-party state and state-controlled economy, which many Arab regimes had emulated. At the same time, the wave of globalization, powered by satellite television and the early internet, began to break down the walls of censorship that dictators had built. Arabs could now see, in real time, the freedoms and prosperity enjoyed by people in other parts of the world, creating a renewed hunger for change and reform within their own societies. This new wave of liberalism was different from the elite-led movements of the early 20th century. It was more grassroots, driven by a new generation of activists, bloggers, and civil society organizations. They used new technologies to connect with each other, to share forbidden ideas, and to expose the corruption and abuses of their governments. Human rights organizations began to meticulously document violations, using international networks to put pressure on authoritarian rulers. This period saw the rise of a new cyber-liberalism, where the struggle for freedom was fought, not just in the streets or in newspapers, but on blogs, forums, and social media platforms, creating a virtual public square that the state could not easily control. This slow-burning fire of dissent exploded into a regional inferno in 2011 with the Arab Spring. The uprisings that swept from Tunisia to Egypt and from Libya to Syria were a powerful and dramatic expression of the liberal dream. Millions of ordinary people took to the streets, demanding dignity, freedom, and an end to decades of dictatorship. Their chants were for democracy, human rights, and social justice, the very core of the liberal agenda. For a brief, intoxicating moment, it seemed that the dream of a free and democratic Arab world was finally within reach. The world watched in awe as citizens, empowered by technology and a shared desire for change, toppled long-entrenched dictators. Although the initial promise of the Arab Spring has since given way to a complex and often tragic reality of civil war, counter-revolution, and renewed autocracy, its legacy cannot be erased. The uprisings shattered the wall of fear that had paralyzed Arab societies for generations. They proved that the people were not passive and that change was possible. The experience, especially the initial success in Tunisia, provided a new generation with a powerful reference point and invaluable lessons. The Arab Spring showed that the liberal ideas of freedom and democracy were not just abstract concepts for intellectuals, but deeply felt aspirations of the masses, planting seeds that continue to grow, albeit under difficult conditions. At the heart of the Arab liberal project lies a set of core principles aimed at building a modern, just, and prosperous society. The first and most fundamental of these is the belief in individual freedom and human rights. This means that every person, regardless of their religion, sect, gender, or ethnicity, is born with inherent dignity and rights that the state must protect, not violate. This includes freedom of speech, freedom of belief, and freedom of assembly. Liberals argue that a society can only flourish when its individuals are free to think for themselves, express their opinions without fear, and pursue their own vision of a good life. This focus on the individual is a profound shift from ideologies that prioritize the state, the tribe, or the sect above all else. A second crucial principle is the call for democracy and constitutional governance. Arab liberals believe that the only legitimate government is one that derives its power from the consent of the governed. This means regular, free, and fair elections, the separation of powers between the executive, legislative, and judicial branches, and the rule of law, where everyone, including the ruler, is subject to the law. They advocate for constitutions that limit the power of the state and guarantee the rights of citizens. They see democracy not as a perfect system, but as the best available mechanism for holding leaders accountable, ensuring a peaceful transfer of power, and allowing societies to correct their mistakes over time. Third, many Arab liberals advocate for some form of secularism, or what is often termed in Arabic as a civil state, Dawla Madaniya. This is perhaps the most misunderstood principle. It does not necessarily mean hostility towards religion. Rather, it means separating the institutions of religion from the institutions of the state. The goal is to ensure that the state treats all citizens equally, regardless of their faith, and that laws are based on principles of public reason and citizenship, not on a single religious interpretation. This, they argue, is the only way to protect both religious freedom for all and to prevent the political exploitation of religion, which has been a source of so much conflict in our region. Finally, Arab liberals champion the importance of critical thinking and the critique of tradition. They call for a re-examination of cultural and religious heritage, not to discard it, but to reinterpret it in light of modern challenges and values. They believe that tradition should be a source of wisdom and inspiration, not a rigid prison that prevents progress. This involves encouraging educational systems that teach students how to think, not what to think, and fostering a public sphere where even the most sensitive topics can be debated openly and rationally. They believe that our ability to question, to innovate, and to adapt is the ultimate key to overcoming stagnation and building a vibrant, dynamic civilization. The path of Arab liberals is fraught with immense challenges, as they find themselves caught between powerful opposing forces. One of the most significant obstacles comes from the very governments in power. The majority of Arab regimes are authoritarian, whether they are monarchies or military-backed republics. These regimes view liberal calls for democracy, human rights, and accountability as a direct existential threat to their rule. They use their vast security apparatus to suppress liberal voices, jailing activists, shutting down NGOs, and controlling the media. They often portray liberals as foreign agents or traitors who are working to undermine national stability, a tactic designed to isolate them and turn public opinion against their ideas. On the other side, Arab liberals face fierce opposition from powerful Islamist movements. These groups offer a competing vision for society, one that is based on their interpretation of Islamic law, or Sharia, as the sole source of legislation. They often accuse liberals of being secularists who want to destroy the Islamic identity of society and import so-called decadent Western values. This religious-based criticism can be very powerful in deeply conservative societies. Islamists often have strong grassroots networks through mosques and charities, giving them a connection to the populace that many liberal intellectuals lack. The clash between the liberal vision of a civil state and the Islamist vision of a religious state remains one of the central political battlegrounds in the Arab world. A third, and perhaps most difficult, challenge is the perceived disconnect between liberal elites and the general population. Critics argue that many liberals are Western-educated intellectuals who speak a language and discuss concepts that do not resonate with the everyday concerns of ordinary people, who are often worried about jobs, food prices, and basic security. This has led to the charge that liberalism is an ivory tower ideology, out of touch with the reality on the ground. Authoritarian regimes and their Islamist opponents skillfully exploit this gap, painting liberals as an alien elite who look down on their own culture and people, making it difficult for liberal ideas to gain widespread popular traction. Furthermore, the legacy of Western colonialism and continued foreign intervention in the region casts a long shadow over Arab liberalism. The close association of liberal values with Western powers, which are often seen as hypocritical for supporting dictators while preaching democracy, creates a problem of credibility. For many Arabs, the West's foreign policy, from the invasion of Iraq to its unbalanced stance on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, makes any ideology associated with it suspect. Liberals are thus caught in a difficult bind. They advocate for universal values that are often labelled as Western, making them vulnerable to accusations of being unpatriotic or serving foreign agendas, even when their primary goal is the betterment of their own societies. What does the future hold for the liberal dream in the Arab world? Despite the setbacks of the Arab Spring and the persistence of authoritarianism, there are reasons for cautious optimism, and much of it rests on the shoulders of the new generation. Today's Arab youth are the most educated and globally connected generation in history. Through the internet and social media, they are exposed to a world of ideas far beyond the control of state propaganda. They see how their peers in other countries live, work, and express themselves, and they increasingly demand the same freedoms and opportunities. This digital generation is less bound by the old ideologies of nationalism and political Islam, and is more focused on pragmatic issues of good governance, personal freedom, and economic opportunity. The experience of the Arab diaspora will also play a crucial role. Millions of Arabs now live, study, and work in the West, experiencing liberal democracy firsthand. These communities are no longer cut off from their homelands. They are connected through technology, travel, and family ties. They can act as a vital bridge, translating and adapting liberal ideas in ways that are culturally relevant. They can also provide support for activists back home and use their freedoms abroad to advocate for change. The Tunisian experience, while unique and facing its own challenges, stands as a powerful example. It shows that a transition to democracy, however difficult, is not impossible in the Arab world, and that consensus building between different political forces can yield positive results. The path forward will not be easy, and it will not be a straight line. The struggle for a liberal society is a long-term project that requires patience, resilience, and strategic thinking. Success will likely depend on the ability of liberals to move beyond intellectual circles and build broad-based coalitions. This means finding common ground with moderate Islamists, on issues of social justice and anti-corruption, as Tunisia's Ennahda and its secular partners attempted to do. It also means framing the call for freedom and democracy not as a foreign import, but as an authentic desire for dignity, karama, that resonates deeply within Arab and Islamic culture. It is a marathon, not a sprint. In conclusion, the question is not whether the Arab world needs liberal values, but whether the proponents of these values can successfully navigate the complex realities of their societies. The dream of a free, just, and modern Arab world is more alive today than ever before, especially among the youth. It is a dream of a region that is at peace with itself and the world, a region where the incredible potential of its people is finally unleashed. The journey is long and filled with obstacles, but it is a journey worth taking. The liberal current, for all its challenges, may still represent the most hopeful path towards a future where every Arab citizen can live with freedom and dignity.